Hello, everyone. I am Trina Bolden Fields,
Uh, Hello, everyone, and I'm Jerome Fields.
and we're hopping on live with you today for a couple things. We were having like some deep conversations. Jerome and I, a lot of times, are having really good, really deep conversations with each other. And so we were having another one yesterday and also this morning. And I was like, oh, we need to podcast that. We need to go live and share that. And Jerome was like, why don't we do it on Tea with Trina? And I was like, no, this is a now moment. And we did need to share it because I do Tea with Trina's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
So here we are.
So here we are.
Talking about our conversation from this morning.
Yeah, we're going to talk about our conversation from this morning, the easy way, and also starting our podcast. And I'm just going to share this with you all. I'm going to be putting out quite a bit of podcast content. I'm going to be doing one with Jerome, doing one with Matthew, my buddy, and I'll probably be doing another one, which I've shared with you all before. So y'all be seeing a lot of me coming up. So be prepared.
But I like seeing a lot of you, so that's all.
Thank you. I like that. Isn't he sweet? So we wanted to talk about the easy way.
Right. So I guess this morning, since I had the day off, was sleeping in, we were talking about how do we sometimes complicate the things in our life. And you've got this poster from Jostens that you had done back when you were a teenager.
Yeah,
and,
I was on a basketball team. I was playing basketball and I was modeling at the same time. And they had a call for someone who could play ball for the Jostens shoot. And I landed that booking. And so.
Right. And you've kept that with you forever. We've got it framed and it travels with us wherever we go in the world. Mm-hmm. And the caption on it is the easy way is not an option.
Yep.
And we're talking about that because we're also talking about mindset and what it means to us to take advantage of the opportunities in life that are before us. And sometimes how do we hold ourselves back? And at what point you reference the poster and say, you know, I just need to tape over that part because I've been putting barriers in front of myself from working with people or doing the things. And I can just let the flow happen or just do the thing. Why do I make it hard?
Yeah, just do the thing. Let me give you a little bit of background about that, or share my journey to that, because throughout life, like I'm a real detailed oriented person. Okay, at times, like sometimes I get into my head and things have to be just so, and I'm walking it out and trying to like map it out and then take that journey. And it's doing it that way sometimes can become hard because I can make it tedious. I can make it heavy with the things versus operating in my greatness, versus operating in my genius. And I was on yesterday live with Matthew Reynolds in a clubhouse room when we were talking, and I shared this with Jerome. We were doing a talk about things, and I remembered that the conversation was happening, and I was thinking, and I came back on to explain the details of what the conversation was already, and I realized that because I was compartmentalizing things in my mind and in my process. And so there are times when I'm not really present when I do that, but I have been doing that throughout life where I'm compartmentalizing things and not fully integrating it. And so I had a conversation today, early this morning before Jerome, about integration. And if I fully showed up integrated, how much more engagement, beauty, service, and sharing that I could share by coming whole, all of me to every aspect of life. And I was sharing as an example in this earlier conversation, like I've learned 4 languages. And I don't know if everybody knows that. This person here, me, can speak 4 different languages. And I was like, I don't think everybody know that. And so the person I was talking to was like, why don't people know that you're multilingual and you actually have 4 different languages that you've spoken throughout your life? And I was like, I don't know. I need to come fully whole to every situation. So that's just a little bit of background of how we got here. And so you and I were chatting about it.
Yeah, because I think there's aspects of ourselves that we often overlook and don't give ourselves enough credit for. I mean, even if you're not fully fluent in the other languages, the fact that you've taken the time to learn and you've made attempts and you've been able to communicate, survive, and engage using the aspects of language that you know.
Right.
And
sometimes it's all in one sentence, you all. I'm just gonna be honest. I'll speak 3 different languages in one sentence. It'll all come out. But go ahead.
No, and I mean, really, it got me thinking because, you know, you read things on Facebook or social media where it talks about, you know, particularly in the United States and our culture, where sometimes folks will get upset with somebody that is maybe immigrating to the country or, you know, is perceived as to not be of the United States and they're not speaking English, you know, completely or fully. And my thought is always, I'm on the flip side of that from my career, and I'm in other countries and cultures, and I do well in other languages, but I got taught a lot, and I still make plenty of mistakes. But the fact that somebody is striving to be understood and in a new area, that deserves respect in its own right. The fact that you can hear enough from somebody that you can understand what their intent and purpose is and something they're trying to communicate, even if it's not 100% precise. Those are things that we need to be able to give credit for and to give credit for ourselves. And even if that means it's a little bit faulty or a little bit flawed, we don't need to be so hard on ourselves to try and be perfect and then not acknowledge it if we are not fully versed, fully perfect in the thing that we are doing.
Right. And but that's part of the hard way. I mean, and probably bringing this back to topic, right, of trying to fit a certain way or do the extra things or do things so we don't seem as if or show up as is another hard way, because we're doing the work to work around just being and doing in the moment or being and doing within speaking our language. If I just practice and speak, no matter what the mistakes may come up, I'll learn better. I'll learn faster. I'll be able to move forward in that. And so we have been talking about that, you know, bringing it back to this. And I do appreciate what you shared and bringing it back to the easy way. The easy way is not an option is what the quote was. And I was thinking about and realizing that if I'm not showing up and living my gifts and my talents or showing up fully for my life, and I'm doing the extra work to hide or to go around and to be so I'm not presented as, that's the hard way. And I don't want to do that. I want to do the easy way. I'm like, we could do the easy way. We could do the thing where we're just being and presenting ourselves in life and in person and not trying to do all the extra so that the other things aren't known or shown or seen. And I was sharing that, you know, in life, you know, I'm having to come to this moment in time, but I think we were chatting about this too. We've become different people in different spaces, right? And this is also a Black experience. It is a trauma response so that you can be safe, right, in a moment or survive. So you need to be this, you need to not speak up or be loud or too loud in a space so that you can be seen or perceived as an amicable person or, you know, a part of that process.
No, and I mean, this is always a challenge because I think when we talk about culture and when we talk about wanting to show up authentically, sometimes we mute aspects of ourselves in order to be perceived a certain way. I have a friend that, you know, instructs on English as a second language. And he told me early on when he was working in his studies that I've never seen anybody that can code switch as smoothly as you do. And it caught me a little bit by surprise, and I can acknowledge it because, you know, my mom's white, my dad's Black. I've grown up in what feels like 2 separate cultures in the United States. And, you know, that's in part led to my choices in life and career and what have you to go abroad. But knowing that I'm comfortable sort of wherever I go and I adapt my language in a way that feels normal to me, to the folks that I'm around, you know, I had to think about that for a moment. And I think that was part of what we were also talking about. Like, in the workplace, I don't want to go along to get along. I want to be heard, I want to be seen, and I want to be respected and listened to for who I am. And at the same time, out in the world and out in life, I'm going to try and connect with folks in positive ways.
Right.
And, so thinking about what's authentic and what feels right, and the topic of what's the easy way, what's the hard way.
Right.
And, sometimes allowing people to see you as who you are
Mm-hmm.
is what you can do. You don't need to create other impressions of yourselves or change yourself to fit into their expectations of you.
Right.
And you shouldn't need that.
Right.
And so that to me feels like the harder way. We need to be able to be open with one another and acknowledge that and get out of that place of fear of, oh, well, if I do this or say this or I show them my real self, then there's going to be a consequence.
Or they may not like me, or whatever the case may be. I mean, we were sharing this earlier, like, I think throughout life, I was taught, this is probably a pivotal moment for me. I'm going to explain this and share what came up. And I don't believe that my mother meant it to turn into this kind of message, but I remember she had asked me to go pay for gas back a long time ago, you all, pumping our gas, and we would take cash inside. There was no card pump, no card to put in the pump then. And so she had asked me to go pay for her gas. She gave me cash. And I was probably 8. And so I'm running with the cash into the gas station. But my mother came after me, grabbed my hand in the money, and was very stern and angry about me running in the cash with money flying, like the money loose where people could see that I had cash in my hand. And she said, you don't ever carry cash like that. You fold it up in your hand and you hide it and you give it. And in my life, I've had this thing from that experience, right? It was a trigger moment. It seeped into my being of, if I make it big, if I do great things and start making a lot of money, people are going to come after me. They're going to take my money. So in life, I've had that thing where I don't show up, or I may make a certain amount and that's what I hit, or I go maybe a little bit beyond it, but then I'm shrinking back because I'm thinking in that childlike experience and memory that somebody is going to come after me and take my money.
Yeah, and that prevents you from taking on partnerships, from taking on mentors and sponsors, because that mentality of, oh, well, they'll be able to take credit for some of my idea, or if I hit it with this, then they'll want a piece of it. And, really we can partner, we can be advised, we can step into opportunities and doors that open for us and not need to push back against them in order to say, well, I'm forging only my own path. And
yeah. And I think those are two different things
they
too,
are a little,
right? A little bit, because you can have collaboration, you can have community, you can work with. Stealing ideas, I think, is something as well. But I think differently, that we can collaborate and work together and build something great to move it beyond. But also the thing that if I get to a certain level, that there's going to be someone that's going to take it away. Right.
No, and so I was a little off topic. You're right. Thank you for bringing me back to that. Because I think what we had talked about was sort of setting up the structures and, sometimes getting ahead of ourselves to say, oh, I've got to do all these legal items and spend all this money on these items, when it's still time to grow to that and then build in.
I think that's another thing too. That's another dynamic and aspect too of Jerome, I think, has talked about when you're building and growing in a business and trying to get everything right, laid out, but sometimes you have to just start.
Yeah, exactly.
Because trying to get everything lined up and everything right and do of these things, and then you start, that's another hard way. And sometimes you just have to get out there and do it, and be and grow as you go. So definitely. So I know we're bringing in all these dynamics and topics in this conversation. And I think the biggest thing is to realize or come into realization, which we do, and we have that opportunity every day and every moment, of what has been holding you back. Are you making it hard for yourself by putting in extra things to do to get to, by looking and hoping that somebody doesn't come after you because so now you have to be this way, by wondering if you're going to be liked. So if you're wondering about if you're going to be liked in the space, acting a certain way where you think that people are going to perceive you in a way that you think that they should, right? So how can you shift that?
Yeah. Also, like not asking the questions that you might have on your mind because you don't want to be perceived as not already having the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big one that we operate out of that fear. And,
Right.
And sorry, I was just thinking, you're talking about how your mom told you like you need to hold your money in a certain way.
Hide it.
It's
like
I
have to hide
okay.
it in my hands.
You can understand. Like you don't, in
Yeah.
some situations, obviously, it's a smart thing to do. You don't want to advertise and make yourself a target necessarily.
That's what she was thinking. Yeah.
The larger message in that when we think about U.S. culture and we talk about things like salary.
Yeah.
And it's taboo to ask somebody how much do you make.
Yeah.
And seeing articles and other social media items that have talked about folks that are now just saying like, hey, why can't we be transparent about this? And
Right.
Why aren't companies sharing pay ranges? Because they're in it to make money as well. And if they know they can get you at a lower value
Ooh.
because you're afraid to ask the question or you haven't been able to find out
My
from
goodness.
others that are in the field. And the reality is we should be able to help one another out, be a little bit more transparent about this is what I earn or this is the range that I'm really in.
Right.
And not feel so obligated to hide that back and for it to be taboo.
But that's another thing. I want to talk about that a little bit, but I want to talk about that. Matthew's posted, grow as you go. Don't take on the job of the oppressor and oppress your greatness. Amen to that.
Yes.
Amen. But I want to piggyback a little bit on that, and it's going to shift us maybe a little bit. But I was listening to, I think, Marshawn yesterday. Marshawn, what is Marshawn's last name? Daniels, I think. And she was sharing how some organizations and if you're a consultant or you're working with them, they will bill their client maybe triple or quadruple the time that they're paying you for. So they're capitalizing on your expertise and you're getting pennies, right? And how she considered that's being pimped out. Sorry, I'm using a term, but that's what she said. And what my thoughts came to be about that is that's why there's a hidden aspect, I think, of some salaries and some things that larger organizations do, or even some small businesses try to do, because they're charging extra, triple the time of what they're paying you, or 4 times what they're paying you. And if you knew your greatness, and if you knew how much you could make outside of that, would you stay in that job for that long? That competition phase is in there. Wanting to capitalize on somebody else's gift and talent is in there as well, which I believe needs to be shifted. That we should be paid what we are worth in our salaries, and we get to choose that, right? And you were talking about transparency and how important that is, and it's essential.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I think coming back to our topic as well, like talking about the easy way is not an option, is the quote, what are the other things that end up sticking with us that we don't recognize, but it filters into our subconscious and shows up in how we operate?
Right.
And how do we let go of those things?
Ooh, yeah.
And I'm seeing Matthew commenting, and I love, his own phrase that he uses in the teachings that he does is how much of our thinking is our thinking. And so as we begin to unlock those messages in our lives, what are the things that we are taking on that subconsciously put up barriers that we don't need to put up in front of ourselves?
Yes.
So having an honest conversation, being able to be transparent, that seems like an easy option when you're talking about career, when you're talking about trying to advance,
right?
When you want to collaborate, and getting out of that mode of filtering yourself. Because when we filter and self-filter, sometimes we don't allow ourselves to shine in the ways that others recognize us.
Right.
And I think that was one of the things you had also brought to me, is that somebody recently that came into our lives and you've done some work with really highlighted that for you. And, from a conversation we had yesterday where you're feeling down about some things, it was such a dramatic shift that I had to smile about it brightly
Yeah.
this morning to say, like, I felt so happy to see your mood amplified to say this person, and my wife don't swear a lot.
I don't
She
swear.
cursed. She's like, this person is effing awesome. So it's like, what?
Absolutely.
My wife said the whole 4-letter word with ing on the end.
Lord, pray for her. Look, I can't even do it right.
Right, to describe like just how good you felt. I was like,
It was
man,
really good.
I wanted to do the Hercules clap. That
Right,
was good.
right. Because y'all, I did have a moment yesterday. I had a so moment. It was a moment of like, oh my gosh, because I got on my Facebook Live. Okay, when did on my business page and said I am having a day, you all. That was all day. That day, that yesterday was like kicking my behind. Okay, it was winning. It was getting the punches in. And the end of the day, I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, Jerome, I don't know if I was totally like through. But today, having this conversation this morning, and what was brought up is the integration piece of being who you are and shining in your greatness and fully stepping into that. Because this is the other aspect of it. It is that for each and every one of us. But because I'm able to do that and shine, I allow space for other people to do that, right? And encouragement for us to do that. But also utilizing my gifts and my talents and my skill to help somebody else along the journey. How important is that? And that's the power of impact. And I talk about this all the time, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, and I know we want to be multipliers in our lives. And folks that help
Yes.
amplify others. And
Amplify, uplift. Yes.
Right. And so, sometimes when we think about that, it's like, why do we have phrases like the easy way is not an option? Well, yeah, obviously it is.
We want flow.
But
it is an option.
Right.
We want more ease and flow.
You just got to think about, well, how do we apply it? What's the circumstance? What are we really talking about? And, all sorts of other things keep popping in my mind as we think about that. The KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. So you don't need to overcomplicate things all the time. We don't need to do that for our lives. We can take a look at what is our situation, what is the obstacle in front of us, and ask ourselves, what way can we approach this? Do we need to make it difficult for ourselves, or is there a simple solution? Is there an easy way that we can follow? And, maybe that's leaning on somebody when you feel proud about not wanting to lean on somebody.
Yeah. Sometimes we need that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that, in my mind, I guess that was sort of the conversation that we had today. And my wife, being who she is, said, "Oh, we're gonna podcast this.
We gotta get that on."
It's like, okay, I didn't know I was partnered up for a podcast. I thought I was just having a convo, but I'm happy. I'm happy, that we're talking, because I know I've had a lot of things rolling through my mind lately, particularly as we've been watching shows and hearing phrases, and I start thinking about, oh, this would be an interesting thing to talk about. This would be an interesting thing to write about. Like one phrase out of the more recent Jonah Hill and Lauren London movie, You People. Right?
Yeah, You People. There's some controvery about that, right? People got ideas about that and thoughts. But
whether or not you liked it or not.
Yeah.
But there's one phrase that was used in there, sort of talking about Black women, and Jonah Hill's character is being questioned by his best friend, saying, "A real Black woman, that's cocoa butter and expectations." And I had to laugh, and I thought, man, that ought to be a play right there.
Cocoa butter and expectations.
Yeah, or a story or something, because I know, it is such an aspect of culture and sensory memory and sensation. And it's like, all right, it resonated with me. And so now it's like, oh, that's a conversation I think would be fun to have. The other thing that came up for me, another show we were watching, Truth Be Told with Octavia Spencer, one of the episodes started out talking about your family is your forecast.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? And
that I say that has a lot, but go ahead. That's a lot of things in it.
And I think that's maybe another thing that we can talk about on another day. But I was excited about it because I was like, wow, yeah. If you were to look at you and I on paper in our family's backgrounds, my father, medically retired, Navy, partially paralyzed, but like 50% body paralyzed. And my mom, a school teacher, they divorced when I was really little. And the economic backgrounds from which they came were poverty to lower income. And yet, out of that, they provided me love and opportunity. And now here we are. I do the work I do as a diplomat, travel around the world, speak multiple languages, earn pretty decent money, and I'm married to a beautiful woman with multiple master's degrees, highly educated, and likewise, on paper, it would be hard to see us beat the odds and come up as we came up. And family is forecast, and I really like that concept because it's not absolute what the prediction will be, but it is gonna give you a good idea of what direction you're gonna go. So that was impacting me, and other thoughts on.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we talked about that with that too is that family is forecast, yet also, like you said, it's not an absolute. I think though with Jerome, he had a lot of mixture of love in those ingredients that was put together for him. So much love from so many people in and around you as you were growing up. Your parents, aunts and uncles, cousins, friends, family friends. This guy grew up as such a loved being. And I think that was an ingredient that allowed you to grow into the person that you are today. Because he didn't believe the poverty way of being or thinking or expression. He believed in love and I think growth and continue to advance. And you had a lot of support in that, which is awesome. And the thing about it is that when our families can also be forecast because our ancestors and different people along our journey in our lives have and could have had a vision for us to be better and to do better in life. So that can be the forecast. Because we have that for our kids, right? And we do the things that help provide for that, for them, which they are now, our teens are seeing, right? That, oh my gosh, what an opportunity this is. And I'm excited about it. I have choices now. And even now we have one that has choices coming up. And she's like, I don't know, they're both great. But giving that next generation, our future generations, opportunities for growth and development in ways that are really aligned with who they are is so essential.
Absolutely.
Okay, so y'all, we've been here talking. So we're going to wrap this up because we have been chatting. So my key takeaways are the easy way is an option. That's one of my key takeaways is that we can make a decision that we can make our lives better and easier versus doing the things that are causing it to be hard for ourselves. But also it's so time for each and every one of us to step into that ease and flow. What is it for you? What does that look like? And how can you step into that and be more of who you are and step into that authenticity? So that's my key takeaway, right?
Yeah, and no, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm looking at myself in the screen as we're talking here and just, paying attention to the fact, the shirt I even wore today, another one of my favorite shows. I like a lot of shows.
Yeah, he watched TV all the time.
I need to be on the treadmill watching it.
He watched TV all the time.
But that's another matter.
Not all the time.
But yeah, no, the thing is,
out of the day.
All right now. The thing is, this right here, believe, that's also a mindset and how we can approach things. So I very much do take into consideration what are the things I can be grateful for and how can I do more to step into my own greatness, and how do we do that as a married couple and partners in this life. And really for me, as we talk about these things is, take a moment to see where you're at, to think about what it is you're telling yourself as you start your day and how you're ending your day. Where do you want your mind to be? And if I can position myself to be forward facing, progressing, to acknowledge the good things that I have in my life, you know, and not be unnecessarily hard on myself or give myself too much grief for, you know, perceived faults that I have, then in my mind, that's the easier way. And so I'm gonna make choices that lead me in that direction. And if the more I can do that, the better I think life can be. And recognize I do have a good life.
Yeah.
So that's the note I suppose I will end on. And I'm sure we will come up with more topics and ideas, even as we figure out what would we call this podcast.
We don't know. Are we going to start a podcast? We've been talking about ideas. No, we partnering. We partners. That's what he said. So we're going to partner on this. Let's go for it. Let's get it. So we've been brainstorming ideas about podcasts. And good morning. Okay. Good morning, Jacqueline. Beautiful. Sorry. I didn't mean to do that, Matthew. But grateful to wake up literally and figuratively to some greatness this morning, mine and yours. Thank you, Matthew. I didn't mean to just put your comment on out there, but we did. Sorry about that. But thank you. But we're thinking about what should we call this podcast? Let us know if you have any ideas. You can pop it in the comment section after listening to this. If there's an idea of what to call it, because we've been thinking about it and we have all these lists of ideas. Like I have a page full. And
you want to read a couple at least?
Read a couple, really? We thought about Black Beyond Barriers. I put Healing Beyond Barriers, the Greater Good, a Higher Calling, Call for More, Living Purposefully. But we also have Bold and Plenty with Bolden Fields. I didn't mention that to you, but we have Bolden Fields. We could do Bold and Plenty as well, or the Bolden Fields podcast, or the Fields Adventures. Don't know. So if anything that sounds great to you all that you thought about that hit you, that you're like, hey, think about this, Jerome and Trina, let us know. You can pop it in the comment section or send us a private message if you would like. We'll take that into consideration as we're going through this list. There are more here, but that's a few of them. So we want to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. Living Purposely is great. Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Let us know too, because we'll be making a decision about this, putting it out, and coming on live with our shares.
Yeah, and having fun engaging with you all and hearing from you all. I'm sure afterwards. So
definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
We'll talk to you later. I'm gonna get there, y'all. I'm closing some notes. But here we go. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Ciao.